Hello, it's Reija and welcome to another video. Today I am going to be sharing with you my January reading wrap-up. And I have to say that this was a fantastic start to 2021. The first thing that I read in January was A Man and His Cat Volume 2 by Umi Sakurai. This follows an elderly widowed man who adopts a cat, who adopts an older cat from a pet store, and their relationship together, how this man comes to love this cat and how this cat comes to trust this man in his new forever home. And the first book I loved so much. I made a full review of that in case you want to check that out. And I just found it to be so wholesome and heartwarming, and especially if you have a cat and you love cats, this series is such a shot of dopamine into your veins. It's so good. I will say that I didn't enjoy this second volume as much as the first one, because in this, the author starts to inject a little more plot into the narrative, so you get to know more about each individual character's backstories, and the author starts sort of paving the way for possible tragedies to be unveiled and such. And it's not bad, but my favorite thing about this manga is the relationship between the man and his cat. So to have this sort of plot arc kind of brings the stress of having to follow chronologically along in the series, because now you have an overarching plot that grows in each consecutive volume. So yeah, whereas the first one stood completely on its own. So that is something to take into consideration if you do decide to pick it up, that after the second volume there are going to be more plot things and character development things happening instead of just focusing on the cutesy cat owner shenanigans. But in any case, I really enjoyed it. I gave this 4 stars. The next book I read was When the Tiger Came Down the Mountain by Nghi, and I loved this so much. 5 stars. I liked this even better than The Empress of Salt and Fortune. This was my favorite book of January. I just really love when storytelling is a thematic feature in the book. So we are following the cleric Nghi, who was the sort of framing character in the first book. So we are following them as they are traveling to this in the North Country and collecting stories from the locals and like archiving things for the Singing Hills Monastery. And they get ambushed by a group of tigers, and in order to stave off being eaten by said tigers, Nghi starts to tell a story about this tiger who fell in love with a human. And the tigers interject and at points tell their version of that story. And first of all, I just love the sort of fairy tale conceit of that sort of 1001 Nights sort of conceit where someone is telling a story in order to avoid danger or in order to avoid something bad happening to them. I love that conceit. I love the sort of meta element of having a story that is not necessarily the real story, and then having 2 competing narratives around the same thing. And yeah, this was so good. I really liked it. I love the fantasy aspects where you have speaking tigers who are shapeshifters, and it's just a normal thing that happens. as I have previously said, I love when fantasy elements are just part of a book and they are not focused on in any necessary way, like they are not made a big deal, because I think when fantasy elements are introduced and they're made a big deal, especially if it's a secondary world fantasy where the characters should already be familiar with these types of things, then it feels a little disingenuous. But I love that in this book it's just a part of the everyday. I really enjoyed this book, and yeah, highly recommend. Then I continued on in the Katherine Arden's Winter Witch trilogy by reading The Girl in the Tower, which is the second book in this trilogy. And this story follows Vasya, who is a daughter of a minor, like a nobleman in the far north of Russia. And she can see household spirits and ghosts and the supernatural, and she is in tune with them. And after the events of the first book, she is forced to run away from home, essentially. And this book, I liked the first book. I loved this one. I think that this book did a much better job at sort of teasing the conclusion of the trilogy, teasing plot threads yet to be unraveled and yet to be discovered. But it did it a lot more subtly than the first book, which sort of introduced you to a bunch of characters and then basically split the cast. And part of the cast just basically disappeared to wait for the sequel, which was so obvious to me. In this one, we get reintroduced to those characters, the second half of the cast, while at the same time keeping tabs and remembering the other characters from the first book. I also thought that the villain in this one was so compelling and devious and interesting, and just the whole dynamic. I think this was very well paced and foreshadowed, and just overall a stark improvement on everything that I liked in the first one. This improves on all those fronts. It still has those discussions about women's role in the society, about the clash between Christianity and the old religion, and how one person's faith can't divert to the tide of something so huge like a new religion taking over. So yeah, I really enjoyed this one, and I can't wait to pick up the third one. Hopefully it won't take me 2 years this time, because I read the first one of these like in 2018, I want to say, so I hope that I will manage to pick up the third one this winter still. And then I went on a complete Martha Wells kick by continuing on in her books of the Raksura series. I read the first book, The Cloud Roads, in 2019, I want to say, and now I finally continued on with the series by reading first The Serpent Sea, which is the second one, which is basically a quest storyline. Moon and his fellow Raksura have to basically go after a magical object, and they get into lots of shenanigans, and it's all about relationship building and building community while trying to basically overcome adversity. And it was it's like, I just find these books to be so fun. Then I read The Siren Depths, which is all about Moon's backstory, and it's all about more like internal conflict. Like, there is some some epicness that happens about the halfway mark of the book. So it like turns from that more internal conflict into a more epic outside evil force coming in. But at the same time, I just think that what I love about these books are the characters and the character interactions and the internal court politics of the Raksura and them meeting up with various other species. I find that Martha Wells does very well in depicting species that are not human. They are like, every species in these books are like, they are humanoid, but they are not human. And Martha Wells clearly has taken some cues from the animal kingdom. For example, the Raksura, their court system is kind of based almost like in bees and in the insect kingdom, like ants and stuff, but also on various like reptile populations, which is super interesting. And I also like that when the various peoples are described and their cultures are described, I can't pinpoint any one specific culture that Wells is pulling from. So you don't have that weird sense where it's like, oh, this is like clearly inspired by Chinese or Vietnamese culture, or this is clearly inspired by some African culture like Egypt or something. Where there's this sort of othering happening. That to me doesn't happen here. Like, the cultures are sort of so ambiguous when taken from the human side, but then there are these more animalistic presentations, which I find more interesting. And these books are just so uncomplicated, pure escapism. Like, you don't have to think about any sort of real world issue when you are going into these books. They're just pure fun, action, romps with camaraderie and found family and all that. It's so much fun. So after those two books, I read the short story collection, Stories of the Raksura Volume 1, to continue on with my fascination with these lizard murder babies. And I actually think that the short story collection was the best one. Like, I gave the Serpent Sea 3.5 stars, then I gave the Siren Depths 4 stars. It was like 3.5, 4-star mark. And then the short story collection I gave 4 stars, because I just thought that when Martha Wells is given a short story to write, she manages to keep the pacing more intentional and more like, she doesn't add in fluff, whereas in the full-length novels there are scenes, especially the fight scenes, that tend to kind of go on a little bit longer than strictly necessary, which is like, when you're into the books because of the characters and character interactions, sometimes the fight scenes are a bit like, oh, no thanks. But like, overall, I'm still enjoying this series so much, and I might actually finish it in the next couple of months. We shall see. This has been a joy to read in January. And there you have it. Those were all of the books that I have read during January. Tell me in the comments, have you read any of these books? And if they interest you, I would like to know. And leave me a lizard emoji down in the comments so that I know that you are here. And I will see you in another video very soon. Bye bye!